Hello everyone, I'm Bruffy1322 and welcome to the first episode in the 2015 Real Life Racing series. So just like the start of the 2014 series, we're going to be starting with an endurance race. Now this happens in between championship seasons, just to give us something to do really whilst we're waiting for the championship to start. But as you can see, the conditions are pretty unusual. There is a lot of snow around the circuit in a lot of different areas. It's only really the track itself that doesn't have any snow on it. As you can see, it's quite light at the moment, but the endurance race does start in daylight and finish at night, so it will get progressively darker as the race goes on. Now this is footage from my teammate's camera. I'm actually out there currently at this moment setting my best lap time for the qualifying. So basically what happens is that we both go out and do a qualifying session, and then we both separate out the stints in the race as well. I will explain a bit more about the format of the endurance race as the video goes on. But yeah, I'm out there currently setting my best lap time for qualifying, and this is actually me going past there in the orange helmet, just doing the best that I can in some tricky conditions. So basically what happens is we have half an hour of qualifying, and I do the first 15 minutes and come in and switch over to my teammate. We're obviously doing a little bit of a practice pit stop, a little bit of a practice driver change, and then he goes out and does his 15 minutes of qualifying. Now at this point I'm just trying to explain a few differences as to what we normally experience on a wet track, because some of the snow that's on the outside of the track actually gets dragged onto the circuit, which means that some of the lines that we normally take in the wet aren't possible to be taken anymore because the snow is there. And as soon as you get onto that snow or that slush, you just completely lose grip and there's nothing that you can do. So I was just basically explaining that to him a little bit. Now I've left this footage in here to show you the conditions of the track. So this is what the track was like when I came off it. This is what I was used to. Basically it was just a regular wet circuit. Obviously there was snow on the outside in certain areas, but in general the track was just a standard wet track that I would normally be used to in a regular day if it had been raining. So that's just put that in the back of your mind, because it's going to be very different later on. But here is the start of the race. So my teammate does his qualifying and then he starts the race as well. We actually qualified in third position. So this is obviously my footage from the outside and his footage from his camera in the top left, all synced up so you can see both at the same time. We started in third position. Now we started there because it was actually my lap time that I set in that first 15 minutes of qualifying that put us into that position. Basically the top three in the qualifying had 1 minute 40 lap times. There was a 140.2, a 140.7 and a 140.9, which is what I'd set, and that's what put us into that third position. Now everybody else in the race was on sort of a 1 minute 42, a 1 minute 43 or worse. So the top three really in qualifying, which included us, were kind of a reasonable amount ahead of everybody else. So it was looking good at that point. Now the start of the race goes reasonably well. It's not too bad. My teammate manages to get up into second position, loses a few positions here, but in general by the end of the first lap he's actually in second place, so made up a position on what we qualified. Now he actually does make a mistake on the third lap. I don't have footage of that because I think it just gets a little bit too dark from his camera really, but he makes a mistake in the first corner on the third lap and that puts him down into fifth place. But by the end of his first stint he's managed to work his way all the way back up into first position, and that's really just because people are making so many mistakes. Yes, he made a mistake to go down to fifth, but everybody else around him is also making mistakes as well. Now the reason for that will become apparent very shortly and I'll explain a little bit more about that. But all you need to know is that by the end of his first stint, by the end of his first half an hour in the race, we were in first position. So when it was my time to go out, I knew that I had a lead to defend. And that was great, that was exactly where we wanted to be. Obviously it's an endurance race, it's 2 hours long, so it is going to be a long haul of it. It's going to be more about consistency than it is about speed. Anything can happen during the course of those 2 hours, but to be in the lead after the first half an hour is, great. That's exactly where we want to be, and we just need to capitalise on that and keep it moving forward. So time for me to get into the kart and let's see what I can do. So he comes in, obviously he gets the call to come into the pits first because he's in the lead, comes in, and it's my turn to get into the kart. I know that we're in the lead, I know that I've got a lead to defend. He gets out, I jump in, and away we go. Now we have all of the regular stuff that we normally have with the lap times and the position counters and the lap counters and all that kind of stuff. All that is back from the previous season, the previous series, and hopefully it will make a bit more sense with all of that there, because the first episode of the 2014 series didn't have that. So cast your mind back to how it was when my teammate first went out on his qualifying. It was a standard wet track, but in general, it wasn't all that different from that. Now, as you can see, it's very, very, very different. I hadn't experienced anything like this before. There was basically snow being dragged onto the track everywhere. It was turning into slush. It was icing over as well. And there was just no grip whatsoever. And, the guys who'd started the race, as you can see, I'm going off. Everybody else is going off as well, who's just come out of the pit lane and just had a driver change. It's absolutely treacherous conditions. Now, the guys who started the race will have gradually seen these conditions as they went through the race. They'll have got used to them as they were driving them, as these conditions began to sort of present themselves. But for us guys who are doing this sort of second stint, we're just being thrown out into this. It's been 45 minutes since I was last in the kart doing my qualifying session, and when I was doing my qualifying session, there was no snow on the track at all. It was all just on the outside of the track. So this was completely new territory to me. I had to use that first lap to get an idea of where I could go, what I could do, and really it was challenging just to keep the kart going in a straight line in some areas. That's how slippy it was. With the snow turning into ice and slush, it was just conditions that I've never ever experienced before, and probably never will again unless I do something like this again. It was pretty much like driving on ice, driving on snow. It was absolutely ridiculous. Now, as I mentioned before, the lap time that I got in the qualifying session that put us into that third place was a 1 minute 40.7. As you can see, the best lap time that was set in the race by my teammate in the first stint was a 1 minute 53.6. So a full 13 seconds quicker than the lap time that we'd actually qualified in. And that just goes to show the difference in conditions between that qualifying session and now. There's so little grip in some areas that it's just you're pretty much a passenger. You have to go around these corners so slowly just to be able to get around them and just to be able to not make any mistakes or spin off or anything like that. As you can see, people are doing that all of the time. So I'm just trying to get used to these conditions. This is something completely new, never experienced this before in my life. Just braking so early for the corners, trying my best to just keep it on the track and keep it going forward. Now, I knew that we were a little bit ahead of the guys who were in second, but we weren't all that far ahead. When my teammate came in, we were in first position, but not by a lot. And actually, at this point, as you'll see on the left-hand side, I actually get overtaken. So I'm put back down into second place. But then, he spins out directly in front of me, and I get that position back again. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. You can be quick, you can really push for a lap time in these conditions, but if you make a mistake, it's almost game over. And that's what a lot of people were doing. There was a lot of experienced people in this race who were just making mistakes. Now, a lot of people were making mistakes. Everybody was making mistakes. I was making mistakes. My teammate did it as well. Sometimes you get caught up in other people's incidents, as we'll see later on. But it's a balancing act really between whether you want to push for going quickly or just trying to keep it on the track at all times and trying to get those laps done. It is an endurance race. It's a timed endurance race, so it's 2 hours long. That means you just have to set as many laps as you possibly can in those 2 hours. And as long as you just continue focusing on doing that, then you can't really go wrong. Now, one of the problems that I had was also trying to get around people. As you saw there during the last part of the lap there, it's very, very difficult to actually overtake people because you don't want to go too far off the track. There's pretty much 1 or 1.5 lines really around a lot of the areas on the track, and that's because if you go even slightly offline, you'll catch your tire in a little bit of snow, a little bit of ice, and that will send you completely off the track. So these are extremely challenging conditions. I've never experienced anything like this before. To be doing this for a full 2 hours constantly, obviously we're splitting it up between us, between teammates, but to be continually going in these conditions, having to think about how you overtake people, where you go, where you get the grip, even just trying to keep it in a straight line in some areas, it's very, very difficult. So at this moment in time, I've actually got a reasonably decent gap. I'm pulling out a bit of a decent gap to the guy who overtook me and then spun out. So basically at this point, it's between us two. It's already between us two in the race. If neither of us make huge mistakes, it's going to be between us two as to who wins, because all of the other teams had made so many mistakes that they were at least a lap behind us two. Now, the guys who are basically in second at the moment and who we're fighting for with the win qualified in fourth. So that we qualified in third, they qualified in fourth, but their best qualifying time, their best lap time in the qualifying was actually 2 full seconds slower than what we'd managed. So in reality, we were quicker than them by quite a decent margin. But the problem is, in these conditions, it's just a crapshoot. You don't know what you're gonna come up with. You don't know where you're gonna have issues or where you can get the grip. You may on one lap be able to take a certain line into a corner, and then on the next lap find out that somebody has spun off, dragged a load of snow onto that line, and you can't take it anymore, and you just go off as well. So it's very, very difficult, and really it's all just about keeping going straight on. So at this point I'm able to pull a bit of a gap to the guys behind. The guys who were in second, I'm pulling a little bit of a gap. He spun out obviously, so it took him a few seconds to get going again, but I am at this point pulling out a little bit of a gap every single lap. The lap times aren't quick at all. As you can see, 2 minutes 6, 2 minutes 11. We normally run 1 minute 6 lap times in the dry. That's just to put that into perspective. In the dry, we're going at 1 minute 6. So we're pretty much almost double the lap time that we normally would get in complete dry conditions. That's putting that into some kind of perspective as to how slow we have to go to just get it around this track. So although my lap times aren't anywhere near the best that we've seen that my teammate got, that's because the track is just getting worse and worse every single lap. As you can pretty much see from the camera, more people spin off. Everybody spins off every single lap, drags more and more snow onto the track, makes it much more treacherous conditions. There's a lot of snow, a lot of slush, and really the conditions get even worse because the temperatures start to decrease. So the snow and the slush that's on the track starts to actually ice over, and it becomes really, really treacherous. So you're basically driving on snow, you're basically driving on ice in some areas. You've just got no grip whatsoever, and that's why we're going so slowly. Now, again, as I mentioned, it's even just difficult getting around people. So I've managed to catch up to this guy really, really quickly, and under normal circumstances, I probably would have been able to pass at this point. But you don't want to be pushed out wide, That's the one thing, caution. I was leaning more towards caution during this race, because if I'd have kept around the outside there, he might have knocked into me. I might have caught a little bit of snow, and then I would have been off, and it might have taken me 2 or 3 minutes to get back onto the track. So I was always thinking about being cautious at this point. However, sometimes things happen that are completely out of your control, such as what we're about to see. So I get a better run out of there, and I get the overtake done, going into the first corner, and my kart completely cuts out. It's completely dead. What you do in these situations is put your hand up and wait for a marshal to come and start you up, but I knew that was going to take far too long. We were in the lead, I couldn't wait for that, so I get up and I do it myself. But unfortunately, we lose first position. So the guy who's just passed us is now in the lead. He's the same guy who overtook me in the early part of the stint and then spun out. Now we're in second position. Through no fault of my own, I'd created a decent gap, obviously, because it was quite a while before he managed to overtake me, even though I was completely left stranded on the side of the track. But through no fault of my own, the kart cut out, and we're now in second place. Now, if I hadn't have got started myself, we'd probably be 30 seconds behind, a minute behind at this point. So I needed to do that. I knew that I needed to get this kart going as quickly as possible. If you ever go to a racing circuit, never ever get out of your kart. But I work there. I know how the karts work. I know that I can just jump out, start it, and get going again. So that's why I did it. And I knew that, you know, when everything is on the line at this point, you know, we're in the lead. I want to win this race. You know, I'm not going to just sit there for a minute and wait for a marshal to come and start me up and run across the track, start me up, when I can just get out and do it myself. Especially when everything is on the line like it is here. So throughout the rest of this lap, as you can see, I've managed to catch up to the guy who's in the lead. If you want to remember who it is, obviously just a sort of a silvery helmet with a grey hoodie. So I managed to catch up. So I am quicker at this point than them. You know, as I mentioned, I was pulling away from him earlier on. It was only the incident with the kart cutting out that's put me behind, really, and I've managed to catch up. So at the time, you're not really thinking, you know, is this the person for the lead? You're not entirely sure that this is the person who is actually in the lead of the race, but you have a slight inclination and you know that you can't really let anybody overtake you. So I get a good run out of that last corner, a much better run than he did, and I managed to get back into first place. Perfect, that's exactly what I wanted. Back into the lead straight away. But now I'm under pressure. You know, now I don't have a big gap that I had before. I've got the second place guy straight behind me. Again, as I mentioned, you don't really know if he really is in second or if he's just a back marker who's, you know, reasonably quick. But I can't afford to take that risk. I have to make sure I stay in front of basically everybody. I don't want to see people overtaking me and staying in front of me. But I make a mistake here, and that's really just because I brake the tiniest little bit too late, and in these conditions there's just no grip to stop you. You know, a tiny little mistake like that and you're off the track, and it takes you so long to get back on again. Thankfully I was able to get back on again myself, but you know, that was I was annoyed with myself that I made that mistake after getting back into the lead. So obviously he managed to get into the lead there, and by the time we get round to the next lap, the end of the next lap, I've managed to catch up. So that's him just at the front of this pack, but he actually goes into the pit lane at this point. Now the reason he does that is to fuel up. So we inherit the lead again. I inherit the lead by him going into the pits for his fuel stop. So basically throughout the course of the race, you have to come in to get fueled up, otherwise the kart would run out of fuel throughout the course of the 2-hour race. So when it comes round to the end of that next lap, I'm the one who's told to come into the pits. As you can see here just on the left, I'm given the instruction to come in and get fueled up, just like the leader had done on the previous lap and came into the pits there. So I know that that's what I need to do. By the time we get to the end of by the end of this lap now, I need to come into the pits and I'm going to get fueled up. Now the guy in front of me also has to come into the pits as well, and basically we both see the same thing and we both do the same thing. So as I'm coming around here, I'm about to go into the pit lane to get fueled up, and I don't. I decide to continue on, because as you can see, there's a huge queue of people in the pit lane all getting fueled up. Now I'm not going in that. I am not going into the pit lane and waiting to be fueled up like that. I'm just not going to do it. You know, I'm in the lead of the race. I need to make sure that I don't lose any time. I'm, you know, really trying hard out here to make sure I don't make any mistakes, so I'm not losing a lot of time. I'm not going to just come into the pit lane when there's a load of people there all queued up and just waste a lot of time waiting behind them, waiting for everybody to get fueled up. I'm not going to do it. So I just continued on, and these are the kind of decisions that you need to make throughout the course of a race like this that could make or break your race, you know. If I'd come in then, as you can see, we're on lap 26 now, we're about 3 laps beyond what we've just seen. I have a little look to my left there. There's nobody in the pit lane at this point. I've just had a decent few laps, you know, not much trouble, nothing like that. So there's nobody in the pit lane, so I decide to come into the pit now. And this is where I get my fuel stop. This is a much better way to do it rather than what would have happened, which I would have just lost so much time in the pit lane waiting for everybody else to get fueled up. So I come in, I get out of the kart whilst they fuel us up, and then once we're done, I go back out again, and I'm out in second position. So although I've lost some time during that, whether they got a quicker fuel stop than I did, whether they just got some better laps in, whatever the reason was, we came out in second position. So, when I went into the pits, well, when the previous team came into the pits, as you saw, I was pretty much just behind them. Now I'm a little bit further behind, I can't see them at this point, so they are a little bit further up the road than what they were. Again, that could be because they got a quicker fuel stop, for whatever reason. They just had a better stint than me in that area, and they managed to retake the lead, as you would have expected, of course, because they were in the lead when they came into the pits, but they're a little bit further ahead at this point as well. So as you can see, the camera is getting a little bit, it is getting a little bit harder to see at this point. Hopefully you can still see, make out a few things, but this is basically, the extent of what I could see as well in the race. Very challenging conditions, it's not just about trying to keep it on the circuit, it's about trying to make sure you can see what's happening as well. So yeah, as I was saying earlier, these are the kind of decisions that can make or break a race. If I decided to go into the pits at that point when I was told to, and had to wait for that big group of people to get fueled up before I could get fueled up, we could have been a lap behind at this point. We could have been even further behind. So I made that decision not to do that. I wasn't going to waste time in the pits. I just decided to go in later. Same thing with the kart cutting out. I could have waited for someone to come and start me up. I didn't. I made the decision to just get out and do it myself, so that the time that I wasted was to a minimum. You have to react to these things that happen to you. You have to make these decisions in a race like this when everything is kind of on the line. Now, this is the final lap of my stint. So we're on lap 32. This has been a hell of a long stint, this one. This was actually 40 minutes that I was out on the track. With the fuel stops and everything like that, I was out on the track for 40 minutes in total. We're still in second place by the end of this stint, but as you can see in the top right, I've put in some really, really quick lap times compared to what we were seeing before. The track is starting to improve a little bit slightly as well, but I've been able to get some decent lap times out of it compared to what I was doing. Now here is actually where we get back into the lead. If you just look on the right hand side, it's very, very difficult to see, but there is a little bit of a shadow of the team that were in the lead. He made a mistake into that chicane area and spun off and was very, very much in the mud in that area, so it took him a while to get back out again with the help of one of the marshals. So we overtook the lead, and that we overtook him back into the lead, and that was on the very, very last lap of my first stint. So this has been it's been a really long stint, 40 minutes long out of the 2 hours in total. I think I got 18 laps done in this stint, and it's been up and down very much so, but by the end of it, I started in the lead, and the most important thing is that I finished it in the lead as well. So as I come in to hand over to my teammate, we're back in the lead of the race, which is exactly where we want to be, as I mentioned. So again, I come into the pits, he takes over, and he goes back out for his next stint. So he's going out for another half an hour, and then half an hour later, I come and do my next stint. So this is the final stint of the race. Basically what's happened, he's done a very good stint as well. No issues, he stayed in the lead. So we've got a decent gap to the guys behind us. Again, it's the same team again that we're racing against. Lap 48 at this point, there are 12 laps to go. Obviously, it's a 2 hour race, but I know now that it's 60 laps. So at the time, I've gone out for this, and I don't know when the race is really going to end. I know that it's going to end at some point, and I'm pretty much going to be out there for half an hour. But I'm not exactly sure when it's going to end. I don't know myself as I'm racing that I'm on lap 48 of 60. That's just for the benefit of you guys. So the track is improving. As you can see, the best lap that my teammates set in that stint was a 1 minute 45.6. So it's getting closer. It's still nowhere near the qualifying time that we set, but it's getting better and better. It is improving all the time. The marshals had been putting salt down on some of the corners to break up some of the ice and the snow. It was getting progressively better and better every single lap. And all I had to do really was stay out of trouble. We were in the lead, we had a reasonable gap, something like 30, 40, 50 seconds, something like that. All I had to do was stay out of trouble. But there's some things that you just can't account for. For example, that guy spinning out in front of me. There was nothing I could do there to avoid that. It was his mistake, and I just got caught up in his mistake. So there are some things that you just can't account for, and you've just got to basically try your best to overcome these things and not let these things affect you, and just continue to sort of focus on the things that you need to focus on to get this kart to the finish of the race. So we're in first position. That's great. I've got another half an hour of this that I need to endure, but if I can make sure that nobody overtakes me, then that's perfect. Or if anyone does overtake me, I need to make sure I overtake them back again, which is basically what I'm doing and what I've been doing throughout the whole race. It's very difficult to know exactly where you are in relation to everybody else. All I know is that there's one team that's behind me, and then everybody else is sort of one lap or greater behind, and I just need to stay out of trouble. Now that's easier said than done, of course. So as we come on to lap 50, things are going okay. I'm just gradually getting back into it. I'm getting bringing my lap times down, just trying to figure out where the grip is again, because obviously the track's changed a lot in the half an hour that I haven't been on it. But something ridiculous happens. Someone decides to just turn into my path. So he's made a mistake and he just decides to turn into my path. I have a bit of a shout at him, and then he decides to knock me off. Absolute complete idiot. I've never witnessed anybody be such a moron like that before. But that's him on the right hand side there. He goes off on the very next corner, so I overtook him straight away. But complete moron, complete idiot, should never be allowed on a racing circuit again. Total asshole, and these are the sort of things that you have to deal with. You've got some amateurs here, and obviously some complete assholes as well, as you saw there. He had no right to be getting himself back on with me coming straight towards him there. He should have waited until I'd gone past. I obviously had a bit of a shout at him because I was angry. We were in the lead. It was a highly stressful situation. I wanted to make sure that I stayed in the lead. So I was angry. I shouted at him, what are you doing, basically? And then he decides to just ram me off the road, which is completely ridiculous. I don't think he did get a black flag, but he should have done. So yeah, these are the sort of things that you have to deal with. And basically, I think my stints were a lot more action packed than my teammates were for stuff like this. The kart cutting out, having to make the decision about whether to come into the pits or not at the right time, getting knocked off like that. It wasn't easy, and it was a very, very challenging time, really. So now we're on to lap 55. Basically, for the previous 5 laps, I've just kept it going forward. I've just kept it going straight on. I haven't let anybody overtake me. I've just kept it going in a straight line. My lap times aren't really spectacular, but I'm not really wanting them to be. I'm just trying to keep going straight on. Obviously, every now and again you'll get caught up with somebody else's issue, but in general, I'm just trying to keep it going forward and just try to get it to the finish line. The only thing that I'm acutely aware of is that I don't want people to overtake me, which somebody does just there. So this guy who's just overtaken me now, I didn't know who he was. I didn't know whether he was a back marker who was coming around, and he was just reasonably quick at this point. I was pretty sure that he wasn't the guy in second place, because from what I could remember, the guy in second place had a silver helmet and a silver hood, but I couldn't be sure. I couldn't be sure that this guy hadn't just overtaken me for the lead. I just didn't know, and it's very difficult to know that sort of thing in conditions like this, in an endurance race like this. So I want to chase him down. I don't want to let him stay in front of me, because it could be the difference between winning the race and finishing in second. So that's what I do. As you can see, my lap times on the top right haven't been all that great, but when he overtakes me, they'd start to improve big time, I can tell you that much. As you'll see, the lap times that I get improve dramatically based on just him overtaking me. So the pace was always there from me to get these kind of lap times, but I was just choosing not to do it really, because I was playing it a bit more cautious. I knew we had a gap to the guys behind, and as soon as I do get overtaken, as you can see here, that's when I start to make the push to get a better lap time. I want to overtake this guy again because I don't want to have lost a race because of this. And it's very, very difficult situation. You know, I was making a mistake like you've just seen there. You know, it's very, very difficult to deal with this sort of situation, especially for someone like myself who isn't the most experienced in the world. You know, it's difficult to know how much you can push. You badly don't want to make a mistake. You badly do not want to go too fast, get it a bit wrong, and go off the circuit and end up having to take 5 minutes to get back on and then losing the race. So I'd made that mistake there, obviously, at that hairpin, and that's just because of the way that the track was in there. I had trouble getting used to that area, but he makes a mistake on the first corner, and I'm back right behind him again. Luckily for me, he actually makes a mistake here and spins out. So that's pretty much probably the story of his race. You know, he's been reasonably quick over a single lap, but making too many mistakes. And I would say that was probably a lot of the stories for a lot of other people as well, because myself and my teammate, we didn't have the best lap. By no means did we have the best lap during the race, but we just kept it going straight on. We kept it going forward. We made sure to make as small mistakes as possible. And as you'll see in terms of the lap times, you know, I got a 1 minute 50, even with that mistake on the previous lap. And then for the next 3 laps, I set 3 really, really quick lap times, a 1 minute 47, another 47 and a 48, just to consolidate that position, because I'd kind of been spooked into going a little bit quicker by that guy overtaking me. It's not over just yet. That he does still come back at me at some point, but I will show that to you guys in a second. So just to finish off this video before we get to the end of it, this is the introductory video to this series. You know, all of the races, all of the episodes aren't going to be like this. For those of you who are new to this series, you're welcome to go and have a look at the 2014 series to get a better idea of what this is going to be like. It's basically, every video is another round of the regular karting championship that I do, with the you know, the lap times, the position counters, the lap counters, all that kind of stuff. All of that is in the regular videos that I do for this series. Go and have a look at the 2014 series to get an idea of what we do on a regular basis. But for those of you who are aware of that, we're just going to basically be continuing the same sort of thing, and we've just started a new series just to sort of differentiate between 2014 and the 2015 championships. So as you saw there, you know, I set a reasonably decent lap with a 1 minute 47.4, reasonably quick, you know, as quick as I'm happy with. And then here's this guy again, just basically just ramming me into the side, you know, just trying to get the overtake done for any reason whatsoever. But that is exactly the story of his race once again. You know, making that overtake, pushing too hard, and going straight into the back of someone and spinning out. You know, that's pretty much been the story of his race. I'm not too worried at this point that he's going to be overtaking me for the win. And as I look back there as well, I actually realised that I do have a huge gap behind me. So as we're coming on to the very last lap now, this is lap 59, we're coming round to the end of lap 59, coming on to the very, very last lap. I don't necessarily know that this is the last lap, because as I mentioned before, it's a timed race, it just finishes when it finishes. But I know that I do have a big gap behind me. I'm constantly looking at that gap behind me, because I did have a big gap and I want to keep a big gap. So there's nobody behind me at this point. I'm not particularly worried about being overtaken. All I really have to do right now is make sure I don't make any mistakes, getting caught up with these back markers and having any issues. But as it's always been throughout this course of this video, it's never quite as simple as that. Someone makes a mistake, I end up getting caught up in it. Thankfully I managed to keep going again, and don't have any major issues, and I still have a big gap behind me. So it hasn't been too bad, you know. There was an issue, but it hasn't been too bad. So all I really have to do is just keep it going forward, keep it going around the track, not make any mistakes that are going to force me to lose a lot of time, like you've just seen people make in that first section of corners, and I almost got caught up in it more so than I really should have done. It's been action-packed. This race has been very, very action-packed. There's been so much that's gone on. It was a very, very difficult race to participate in with the conditions as bad as they were. The visibility was so low. You know, what you're seeing on the camera is pretty much what I could see as well. The conditions, as I mentioned, just trying to keep it going, not get caught up with other people, and having the added pressure of knowing that I'm in the lead, knowing that we're fighting for the lead throughout the course of the entire race, and not trying not to make any mistakes to do that. So again, I just take another little look to the right of me there just to make sure that that gap is still there. I am pretty happy with that. You know, I'm going back to being a bit more cautious at this point. I've set 3 quick laps, as you can see there, and now I'm just trying to be a bit more cautious again to get it to the finish line. I round the last corner, and it turns out that here is the checkered flag. Very difficult for you to see, obviously, but the checkered flag flies there, and we win the race. Couldn't tell you how happy I was. You know, it was absolutely fantastic that we'd managed to get this win. After all of the stuff that we've been through in this endurance race, that we'd done a half an hour of qualifying and then a 2-hour race, and at the end of it, we finished in the lead. We finished on the top spot. I was so happy. Myself and my teammate, we were also actually racing for Nonchalant Dominance. That was our team name in the race. And he's also a member of Nonchalant Dominance who races with us on GTA as well, Smithy112 on PSN. We were racing for Nonchalant Dominance. Obviously, I was live tweeting at the time. I wanted to get this win, not only for myself, but for the GTA crew as well, if you like. So it was absolutely fantastic to get this win. And, you know, once the checkered flag has gone, all of the stress from that final stint just completely dissipated, and I was able to do a really slow lap round, which is what you're watching right now, just to kind of celebrate the win that we just had. So that will about do it for this video, guys. I hope you've enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts down below. It has been a long one. I'm surprised my voice hasn't run out at this point. The next episode 2, will be showing the first round of the regular season. So we'll be back to the regular season that you're all used to from the 2014 championship. If you haven't seen that, go and watch it now. The link will be in the description. And I really hope that you continue to enjoy these videos. Thanks a lot for watching, everyone. Again, leave a like if you enjoyed and all your comments down below. And I'll see you next time.